Alright guys, so I was trying to talk to the camera here, found out I was having issues with the microphone still picking up tons of background noise. I feel like it's an internal setting in the camera that's picking up on the microphone from the camera instead of using the external mic. No idea how to fix it, been working on it for a while, so we're just going to jump straight into the video with a voiceover. So here I am putting on the Auto Touch Z plate on the corner of the piece of plywood. This is a 3/4 inch birch plywood, cost us roughly $93 from the store with taxes and everything included. So as you probably already know, wood prices are still insanely high. That's why it's really hard to get these projects out, because it's so expensive to make anything. But anyway, this video is making a kitchen helper stool for my toddler. He's 2 years old. He wants to be in everything, climb up on everything. So we thought to make things safe, make things to be more involved whenever mom's in the kitchen cooking or if I'm in the kitchen doing something. This is a stool that he can drag around or we can move for him, and it allows him to get up on counter height so that he can sit there and, you know, pretend to cook with us or help us if we have something that he can do next to us while we're preparing food or whatever the case may be. And it's very useful, very helpful for them growing. So as you can see, we're adjusting the flutes, right? So when you're using the Auto Touch Z plate with the AVID CNC on the Mach 4 software, you pretty much center the spindle with the bit in it, and then you put your magnet on it, you lower it down. Then once it gets its Z-axis, you turn the flute. It can get its Y-axis, you turn the flute again, it can get the X-axis. So very helpful tool, makes life easy. Make sure you've got the board strapped down really well. As you can see, we've probably got 3 to 4 clamps on this in the corners. Be very mindful of how your bit's going to cut. You don't want to cut into anything. And with this tool, we're doing a profile cut on the outside lines. There's a lot of mistakes that I did make with this, and we'll kind of go over those as the video gets to that point. Alright, so this is one of the first mistakes that you'll see that we made. We are cutting down into the line. I realized and I stopped the G-code, but it was already too late. We had already cut a full line by the time I noticed it. We should have done these stair lines. This is where we have an adjustable step that can be pulled out, put back in. And we should have cut this wider to fit the material, so this needs to be 3/4 inches. And in this case, I still have that 1/4 inch bit on there, and it's cutting all the way through the board. So it kind of causes a problem. We shouldn't have cut all the way through the board, and we should have used a larger bit. So we had to go back and redo this portion. This is the stair lines that I was talking about earlier, where we couldn't get them to line properly, and we should have basically done 2 separate sections of G-code, one for the stair lines and then one for the profile cut. So that was me just trying to make everything happen all at one time. Definitely going to go back, fix that in the coding so it's not a problem anymore. Alright, so we've already swapped out the bit to the 3/4 inch bit. We've started cutting the lines. Another mistake that I noticed here, and it's one I'm not exactly certain how to fix yet. I think my toolpath's going in the same direction. They're not going the same direction right now. I need to decide which direction was the proper way, because what you're going to see is the lines do not stop at the same start and stop at the same points, right? One overshoots and one undershoots. So for some reason, because of the toolpath direction changes on the section that it's cutting, it doesn't keep it even. And I can't figure out why it did that, right? So if you look right there, you'll see where it's overshooting on this one. It should stop right at the edge of the line, and that means it's uneven. So I had to go back and fix this by hand once this was all done. So, you know, the whole point of having a CNC machine is so everything's nice and accurate. But on the right hand side, you see the, I don't know, not quite a 1/4 inch overshoot, which means it's too far from the inside edge and too far on the outside edge. But I think that's the right hand side is the way I would want to go, because if you look on the left hand side, it's going into the section, like it's kind of cutting all the way through on the support side, and I kind of like having that little wall there to stop the first step to keep it from sliding all the way out. It just makes it easier for assembly purposes. Alright, so moving on from the CNC side of my shop, headed over to the workbench. We're bringing the plywood in. As you can see, when we lift it up, it didn't cut all the way through, so we're bringing it to the workbench. That way we can go ahead and grab our Milwaukee Multitool, which we're going to use to cut out all the lines. We could have used a router. The reason I didn't use a router is I wanted to make sure that we could easily keep the flat of the blade up against the wasteboard side, so we're not cutting into the material. If you guys used routers before, or if you haven't, it's really easy to overshoot or get out of alignment. So with this, I can just kind of cut through it real quick, real easy. Didn't take long. it's just a hassle we didn't want to deal with. It's something that we shouldn't need to deal with. But again, we made the mistake, didn't get it to go all the way through the material, and this was the easiest way I could come up with to try to correct the mistake that we made. We just kind of let it fall through. It left a little bit of a lip. Whenever you're breaking these extra pieces off, you want to make sure you bend it against the interior side. That way you're not ripping it off, right? Because this is a piece of plywood, so it's all layered. And if you don't do it correctly, it's going to leave a bunch of tears in it. So once we were done with that, we took a flush trim bit, put it in our plunge router. You can use a palm router if you've got one. I didn't have a palm router at the time, didn't have a router table at the time. I have since purchased them because this took so long to do by hand, flipping the board constantly, having to clamp everything down. It's a lot easier with the router table. So we took that flush trim bit, which has a bearing at the bottom. That way it can run along the material and keeps everything nice and in line. You want to go counterclockwise on the outside, clockwise on the inside. Once we got all this knocked out, we went ahead and swapped that flush trim bit out with a 1/4 inch roundover bit. That way we could make all the nice edging smooth, right? Because this is for kids, and just even if it's not for kids, it makes it more comfortable to pick up, grab, especially with the handle area. So we did a roundover bit on every side, so we had to flip the material, twice and rotate it just so we could get to all the corners. And then it was on to the best part, which is sanding. So we just took a pencil like we always do, put a small pencil line on everything so we can see what has and hasn't been sanded deep enough. We took this up to, I think it was 220 that we went up to, just so it would be nice and smooth again. Our 2-year-old's going to be barefoot, not wearing any socks, probably, grabbing this plant on it, climbing on it. So we want to make sure there's nothing rough for him to get caught on or to get splinters from. Pop in the earbuds, listen to some music, and spend the next couple of hours doing all the finishing work, making sure everything's going to line up nice and proper before we go and do the assembly. For assembly, we decided to do the pocket hole jig. So this is a correct pocket hole jig with 3/4 inch material. So just adjust the knob, put it down at the 3/4 inch mark, and you should be good to go. Make sure that when you're drilling this, you start your drill as you slide in, not starting the drill right when you get to it. Just saw that in some comments recently on one of our websites. And we did this pretty well. We made one mistake on this. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I drilled in all 3 holes instead of just the 2 exterior on one of the legs. Not a big deal. Put a plug in it, sand it down, call it a day. So overall, not too bad. We did have to stop here, run to the store the next day to get some screws. I didn't have any 1-inch screws that were short enough to go in here. Everything I had was like 1 1/4 inch. So we had to go pick some up from the store. So assembly was one of the hardest things we had to do on this project. We put glue on the edge of the board, and then we took the pocket hole screws, screwed them in. We used a level to try to keep everything nice and straight. That way we're not trying to eyeball it to line it up. One thing that we did get from our CNC group to go and do in the future is instead of trying to do this with pocket holes, the better option would probably be to do dovetails or some other type of joinery. The CNC machine can do it automatically on its own. Well, I say automatically, but you can set your CNC machine up to do it, and that would just make assembly a lot faster and easier, and it would fit together. And overall, I think it would probably be a better look because you're not going to see any screw holes in there, right? You're not going to have to cut any dowels or any plugs to slide in, cut. It saves you a lot of work, a lot of time, and gives you a stronger connection. But we did put glue in all the seams. We did put the pocket holes in to hold everything together. It's a very sturdy little stool. I did lose the rest of the footage of this. I don't know what happened. I don't know if my camera died or if the memory card got full. So I apologize for that, but this is all we have. So now we've transferred over to the garage. This is a space I'm trying to keep clean, used for all the painting, finishing work that we can. That way it doesn't get a bunch of sawdust on it. I've been having issues with that in the past where there's just a bunch of floating dust in the air. It gets on the product, takes away a little bit of the smooth finish. So typically on polyurethane, spar-urethane, any kind of finish sealer that you're putting on there, you're going to want to do at least 2 to 3 coats. You may want to sand in between depending on what you're going for. In this situation, the wood's already extremely smooth, so the finish isn't going to take much work. We're just going to spray it on, come back 2 hours later, spray it again, come back 2 hours after that and spray it again, and then we call it quits. Probably take 2 cans. At the same time, the wood is turning a little bit more yellow because we're spraying that urethane on there. If you look on the screen now, we've got my son. He didn't take long to figure it out. We just stole some of his favorite toys and a book, put it up on the counter. He loves to read, or at least try to read, have us read to him. And he loves having his little panda bear and his little ball. So didn't take much to lure him up there and get him interested in trying to use the stool.